Welcome. So glad you're here. If you're an adult community learning tutor, you already know you're on the front lines of changing lives. This whole explainer is really just for you. We're going to break down how you can best support your learners with their essential skills needs, and we'll get into some really practical insights and tools you can start using, well, pretty much immediately.
Okay, let's start with the big picture, the why behind all this. This quote from a recent survey in Wales, well, it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? The world is changing fast, and the skills you teach are no longer just nice-to-haves. They are literally the keys to the future. Your work isn't just about teaching a subject, it's about building a bridge to real opportunity in this new economy.
So, here's what we've got on tap. We'll kick things off with why these skills are so critical. Then, we'll get into how you can spot learners who might be struggling in silence. From there, we'll dig into the backstory behind those needs, and then, this is the really practical stuff, we'll talk about breaking down barriers and building your very own inclusive toolkit. Right, Section 1. Why do these skills truly matter? You know, it goes so much deeper than just landing a job. The literacy, the numeracy, the digital skills you're teaching, they are the absolute building blocks that empower your learners to navigate the world with confidence. We're talking about everything from managing their money to helping their own kids with homework.
And that brings us to a really crucial part of your role, spotting the signs. You know, a lot of learners, often because of bad experiences in the past, aren't just going to put their hand up and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. It's really up to us as tutors to become kind of like detectives and learn to recognize those subtle clues that tell us someone might need a bit of extra support.
So how do you actually do it? I mean, what are the things you should be looking for? The real key here is to look for patterns, especially patterns of avoidance.
Just take a look at these. On their own, any one of them seems totally normal, right? Oh, I forgot my glasses. You know what? I'll just fill this out at home. But when you start to see a pattern, the same learner using these excuses over and over, that's a huge red flag. They're probably not just being forgetful. They're using these as coping mechanisms, like a shield to hide a skills need.
And in a group, these coping mechanisms can look pretty different. You know, the class clown might be using jokes to deflect from a task that they find really scary. Or a learner who's super quiet, or even gets a bit confrontational, they might be reacting out of a deep-seated anxiety or frustration. It is so important to remember, these aren't just personality traits. More often than not, they are signals for help. So, recognizing the signals, that's step one. The next step is to try and understand the backstory. Why is this need there in the first place? Every single learner brings their whole life story into your classroom, and their past experiences with school are a massive part of that story. We can sort of think about these reasons in three big buckets that all connect. You've got personal factors, that's someone's unique journey, maybe an undiagnosed learning difficulty. Then there are social factors, which is all about their environment, like their home life. And then economic factors, which are those wider societal pressures. But honestly, in the real world, it's almost always a mix of all three. Let's look at some real-life examples. It could be something like a disjointed education because their family moved around a lot. Maybe an undiagnosed issue like dyslexia. It could even be the lasting scars of really bad teaching in their past. But there's one on this list that has a particularly powerful cascading effect. 60%. Just let that sink in for a second. That's a huge number. And it represents what's known as the intergenerational effect, which is a powerful and often invisible cycle of disadvantage. And here's the amazing thing. You, as a tutor, are in the perfect position to help break that cycle. And this just illustrates it perfectly. When a parent struggles with essential skills, it can cast this long shadow over their child's own education, right from the very start. But, and this is the magic, when you empower that parent, when you help them learn, you're not just changing one life, you are literally brightening the future for an entire family. Okay, so we've dug into the who and the why. Now let's make a shift and talk about the how. This section is all about action. How can we actually break down the barriers and create a learning space where every single person feels like they can succeed? It really boils down to this simple but incredibly powerful three-step process. Step 1. Just think about who your learners are. Really think about them. Step 2. Try to identify what might be getting in their way. And Step 3. Do what you can to remove as many of those barriers as possible.
Now, it's really useful to know that these barriers come in different flavors. You've got your situational barriers, those are the practical things like childcare or the cost of the course. Then there are institutional barriers, things like super confusing enrollment forms. But it's often these dispositional barriers, the ones inside, like a crippling fear of failure or just rock-bottom self-esteem, that are the highest mountains for our learners to climb.
All right, this brings us to our final section. It's time to build your inclusive toolkit. We're going to arm you with 3 core principles: diversity, inclusion, and well-being, that are going to help you tackle all of those barriers we just talked about.
First up, diversity. And look, this is so much more than a buzzword. It's about genuinely recognizing and celebrating that rich tapestry of experiences and backgrounds that every learner brings into your classroom. It's not about treating everyone the same. It's about valuing what makes each of them unique.
And here's the so what. Here's why it actually matters in practice. A diverse classroom isn't just a nice social goal. It's a way more effective learning environment. It sharpens everyone's critical thinking, it prepares learners for what the modern workplace actually looks like, and it builds communication skills. It is truly a win-win for everybody.
Next up, we have inclusion. I love this way of thinking about it. If diversity is the what, so the mix of people you have in the room, then inclusion is the how. It's the active, deliberate work you do to make sure every single one of those people feels seen, feels valued, and has a real shot at taking part and succeeding.
And here's what that actually looks like on the ground. It means being flexible in how you teach. It means making sure your handouts are accessible to everyone. It's about communicating with absolute clarity. And this one's huge. It's about creating a space where it feels safe to try something and maybe get it wrong. These are the real concrete actions that build an inclusive classroom.
And finally, we get to the principle that holds everything else up: well-being. You can just think of it as the foundation. I mean, a learner who is drowning in stress or struggling with their health just doesn't have the bandwidth to learn effectively. Their well-being is basically the soil that all learning has to grow from.
And your role here is just vital. It's all about building respectful, trusting relationships. It's about being able to recognize the signs of stress. It's about creating a supportive atmosphere where people feel like they belong. A positive environment isn't just a nice to have. It directly fuels a learner's motivation and builds up their resilience. So as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with a direct, personal challenge. Just think about the learners you have in your class right now. Based on everything we've talked about, what is one single barrier? It could be situational, institutional, or dispositional. What is one barrier that you can help remove for one of them this week? Your small act could be the exact breakthrough they need. Because in this work, it's so often the small changes that make the biggest difference.